Welcome to Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Charter is pleased to be presenting a series of conversations with candidates for the Superior Court in Los Angeles County. There are 4 races that are going to a general election in November, just a few weeks off. One of them is for Superior Court office number 84. There are 2 candidates that advanced from the primary. We will start by speaking with one of them, Javier Perez. We will then speak with the other candidate, Susan Jung Townsend, and then we'll have the candidates come together to have a conversation. And Javier Perez, I thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to speak with you about your background before we talk a bit about your desire to join the bench. Give us a sense of who Javier Perez was in 1990 when he graduated from law school, the same year I did.
Well, I was, I guess, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Of course you were.
And believed in doing well for the community.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to have law clerk for the office, the district attorney's office,
Right.
and had become exposed to some of the good work that is done by our office.
And let's talk about that. Your ballot designation says that you are a supervising criminal prosecutor because you are a deputy district attorney. You oversee the West Covina region today.
Correct.
And you've been with the DA's office since 1990.
Yes. I was a law clerk. When I took the bar and passed it, I was hired immediately as a deputy district attorney.
Let me ask you, why did you decide to pursue that route? Presumably, you could have done what I did, which was go to a big law firm, make a good living, but you took a different path. One could argue a more noble path, and that was public service in the area of prosecution.
Ironically, when I was in law school, I was actually law clerking at a private law firm, corporate securities litigation firm. It was Standard Barnett Wilson, Jacobson and Smith. In any event, the senior partner took me aside prior to my 3rd year in law school and suggested that maybe I should clerk with either the district attorney's office or city attorney's office in order to get exposure to different types of law. I took him up on it. I applied to the DA's office. I was fortunate enough to have been hired by them. And once I started working in the DA's office, and it was such a gratifying experience doing the right thing, trying to help the community, I became a lifer.
Right. And you worked in East Los Angeles for a time. I would presume very tough years. East LA can be a rough community. Is that fair?
I think I think it has a reputation as a rough community, and I think there are serious crimes that occur there. But it is, I was born and raised in Montebello, right near the courthouse, and the community is filled with good people.
And it shows a bit of bias on my part, I admit it. And I think it does beg the question about your desire to serve. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you are the son of immigrants, the proud son of immigrants. Your father, Jose, had a tremendous impact, still does, I believe, on you.
He does.
What's amazing to me, and my family story is somewhat similar. I'm 2 generations down. You're 1 generation down from immigrants. Your dad finished 6th grade. Your mom finished 2nd grade. And you might become a judge.
Yes.
It's a miracle.
We
are miracles.
It is a testament to the work ethic instilled in me by my parents, the values that if you work hard enough and try hard enough and are persistent enough, good things will happen to you and your family. And armed with a 6th grade education and a 2nd grade education, my parents immigrated from Mexico and were able to raise 7 children, all of them professional, educated.
Every one
of them, and doing well.
How does your background, your family background, being the children of immigrants, being a successful lawyer, having siblings that are successful, how will that inform you should you become successful and join the Los Angeles County Superior Court?
I think a characteristic that's very important in the DA's office and a judge is to have a sense of empathy and understanding of the people and the parties that come before you, the victims, the witnesses, the defendant. My parents instilled in me a sense of understanding and empathy towards others, and through hard work and dedication and leadership, you can help those people.
Let me ask you then, you have been a DA your entire career.
Correct.
Over 25 years.
Yes.
And so you have certain glasses on, which are prosecutorial, presumably. Should you become a judge, your glasses will change their color. They'll have to. What does that look like, though? How do you all of a sudden change 25 years? And you're not unique. Most, I think, 7 out of 8 of you that are running are in prosecution. But how do you change that viewpoint?
I think it's a misconception that a person has or should have a prosecutor's glasses on. I think the mission of a prosecutor is to advocate for justice, and not simply prosecuting everybody to the fullest. Justice is our mission, and that's what I've been doing for the last 26 years.
And I must say, I was reading some coverage about your race, and in one of your evaluations, your superior wrote, he does not hesitate to challenge judicial actions that run counter to fair play. That's quite a statement, especially as a prosecutor, because even aside from being a prosecutor, we as lawyers, I don't practice anymore, we want to win. And if the court if we feel as if the court's favoring us, we want them to favor us. But what this is saying is no, you think fair play is more important.
It is. Our objective isn't to win.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yes,
we have that competitive streak in us as lawyers.
And as a trial attorney, our objective when we get into a trial is to win. However, underlying that objective is a base foundation that we have to do the right thing and we have to seek justice. And part of that is fair play. I will assure people that if I become a Superior Court judge, that everyone will abide by the rules and everyone will obtain a fair trial.
We also read in one of your evaluations, he is an independent thinker who stands firm against law enforcement initiatives that do not meet appropriate evidentiary standards or otherwise satisfy the county. Again, that's showing a streak, an independent streak. Have you received backlash, though, because of that?
I think initially, as a supervisor, when you go into a jurisdiction and law enforcement agencies are sometimes used to having done things a certain way, right. I wouldn't call it backlash. I think they're called growing pains. Okay. When you explain to them, one, the case isn't ready to be filed, or we can't prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't mean that we stop the investigation. We work together as a team, how we can improve the case so that it does become ready. Or at times it's this person we don't believe is guilty. We're not going to file charges against them.
When we come back, we're going to be speaking with the other candidate in the race. Her name is Susan Townsen. We'll speak with her independently, and then we'll bring the two of you together for a conversation that I'm sure will be lively and respectful.
Yes.
We are candidates for judicial position, and we appreciate you joining us. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter Local Edition. Welcome back to Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are continuing our conversation with candidates for the position of judge in Los Angeles County. We are speaking with the two candidates For Superior Court Office number 84, there were 4 candidates in the primary, 2 advanced. Susan Jung Townsend was first in the primary, garnering 36% of the vote. Susan is a deputy district attorney. Her ballot designation is criminal fraud prosecutor. We'll talk about that position, but let's start in the beginning when you joined the DA's office about 17 years ago.
Yes, I did. I have been a career criminal prosecutor for the last 18 and a half years. I started in the office in 1998.
Okay.
And I've enjoyed a terrific career in that office. It really taught me so much about criminal litigation, about the important service that we provide to the public.
I want to ask you, as I have the other candidates for judge, all 8 that have advanced, or I think 7 of the 8 that have advanced, work for the government, work as prosecutors.
Right.
And so I want to get a sense from you, why did you decide to pursue this path? As I may have mentioned, I used to be a lawyer. I pursued a different path. I did clerk for a judge for a year, but then I went to the big law firm and made the big bucks. What made you decide to take what I would call a more, respectable path, maybe?
Well, it really is the same reason why I chose this field of becoming a prosecutor in the first place, which is I was born to immigrant parents. I was born and raised here in Los Angeles. And they always taught me at a very early age that the best token of gratitude I could give back to a community that was so good to us was to go to public service. And that's why I chose my profession. I've enjoyed it immensely because so much of it is really about being a public servant, about protecting the community. And it's something that when you really think about what judges do, it's just a logical extension of that. And I've been around so many great judges that, showed me, how much more there is in that role and how much experience is required for that position.
Let's talk about your immigrant background. You are the children of Korean immigrants to this country. And I read about a moment in time in young Susan Jung's life, only 3 years old when this happened.
Yes.
And it really put you on a path. And I'd love for you in, 60 seconds or less, to tell us what happened when you were 3 years old.
It had to do with a car that my dad purchased, and I got to be truthful, it was before I even started grade school.
Oh,
I think I
God.
must have been three and a half.
Okay.
And I could barely even understand what was going on, but my parents actually took me to the trial, and I didn't testify, but I just sat as an audience member, and it really did just impart a very memorable piece of my childhood, my first exposure really to the judiciary. And you have to understand, at the time, my parents did not speak English fluently, so there was the assistance of an interpreter. And, through the lens of a child who's witnessing the legal process unfold for the very first time, it always just left a memory for me that I really vividly remember today, especially how important it is to have a judicial officer who maintains control over a courtroom and sets the decorum of how he or she wants, the attorneys to litigate a case and the witnesses.
And so how does your immigrant background inform you as you potentially take a seat on the bench? Does it inform you?
Well, I do think that in large part, part of being a bench officer is ensuring that justice has been served and also having the public confidence that the legal process is working. Now, the public of LA County is vast and wide. It's a fantastic, great community filled with diversity. And to that extent, I think it does give people confidence that this legal process is composed of people just like in the community.
Right. I want to talk about the 2 hats that you've worn over the last 17 years in the DA's office.
Sure.
You started, and your first 8 years was focused on, as what I understand is called general crimes. What is general crimes? And give us a sense of how those years would inform you as a judge.
Sure. I'm really proud of the fact that really in the first decade of my career, I spent it in the busiest hub of criminal litigation, which is downtown Los Angeles. I was assigned in central trials, which essentially is a trial factory. And every kind of case will come before you, and you are really just sowing your oat, so to speak, on how to become an effective trial advocate. And I tried cases ranging anywhere from domestic violence, gang crimes, murders. It just ran the gamut.
Over 50 trials, I understand, throughout your career.
Yes, and that was, it really makes you comfortable being in a courtroom and knowing, especially being in front of so many great judges in downtown LA, how a criminal courtroom should be run.
And then you made a big and bold move. You moved to a division that is essentially a white-collar division, fraud division. Is that fair?
Yes, correct. So what I did is I took a chance because, I have always, the thing I've loved about being in the district attorney's office is there's so many different areas of law. And the one area of law that I really never had very much experience in was fraud crimes, because they require so much more attention, and it really requires one person to just vertically prosecute it. So I did ask for an assignment in the Bureau of Fraud and Corruption. The kinds of cases that I've been working on in the last 8 years is so vastly different from what I used to do. And they're essentially fraud crimes that involve some sort of financial loss usually, and elements of identity fraud.
I would presume that some of those crimes may feel as if they have a civil element to them. And so I ask, given that you've been a prosecutor for your career, would you feel comfortable in a civil courtroom?
Well, when you become a judge, you actually do not get to control where
that
they're
I know.
Send
I know
you,
that.
Right. And so, you're right. It's just as diverse as the different kinds of judicial bench officers are out there.
Right.
I would actually be open to going to wherever they needed me,
right.
as long as it's somewhat compatible with my commute and taking into
I hear
consideration
you.
where I live.
Right.
But to be quite honest, yes, I mean, I that is one of the things I'm really proud about what I bring to this position, which is a very broad range of legal expertise.
You've mentioned some of the great judges that have inspired you.
Sure.
Could you provide for us, Susan, some of the attributes that have been most inspirational to you over these 17 years? And what, should you be successful, which attributes do you want to assume yourself and show when you're a judge?
Yeah, sure. I think really in making that transition from being an advocate to a jurist, essentially being a bench officer, you really have to understand the roles that each of these parties play in a courtroom. And the kinds of judges that to me left the most impression were the ones that exercised fairness, impartiality. They completely understood the dynamics of and respecting the sides of each of the advocates. In a criminal prosecution, they have their burden of proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt. If for the defense, they have to also understand that they have their obligations to provide the best representation for their clients. So, a very effective judge is someone who is not going to advocate, but in fact is ensuring that they're all playing by the same rules, exercising impartiality, moving this case along, and making sure that justice has been served. And that's really, the reason I wanted to become a judge, because I dared not have even thought about it unless I had the seasoned experience, knowledge, and the temperament that is required for such a difficult task.
When we come back, we're going to invite Javier Perez to join us. He is the other candidate that advanced to the general election for Superior Court Office number 84 in Los Angeles County. There are 4 races that will be on the ballot for judge. You are in one of 4 of them. We will have a conversation that I presume will be lively but respectful, as I said before. These are candidates for judge, not for a traditional political office, but I honor both of you for being here. So yes, when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Susan Jung Townsend and Javier Perez. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter Local Edition. Welcome back. It's Charter Local Edition. I am so glad that we at Charter are able to speak with the candidates for judge for Los Angeles County Superior Court. We are continuing our conversation with the 2 finalists for a seat on the Superior Court bench. It's office number 84. They are Javier Perez and Susan Jung Townsend. And I want to ask both of you, we'll start with Javier, why seat number 84? Is there a magic to this? It shows my ignorance. What's the difference?
It's actually pretty simple. When I initially filed in seat 11,
okay,
no one was in there. The goal was to run unopposed.
Right, you'd hope that, right?
Another DA jumped into that race. I then became aware of a judge let me know that they were retiring from seat 84.
I see.
So I went and filed in seat 84.
It's that simple.
That's why I picked 84.
There's nothing about 84. If you're seat 84, you get to try matrimonial cases. It's not like that.
No. I went in there to 84 because no one else was running in 84 at the time.
But now Susan is, as did two others, by the way. Why did you pick seat 84? Was it a similar analysis?
Actually, it was different in the sense that I have a consultant, and that consultant was representing 4 people. Now, the understanding was that, well, for me personally, I would never challenge a sitting judge, so it would have to be an open seat.
Fair enough.
So all 4 candidates who were represented by the same consultant also had the condition that we cannot run against each other. So I actually was sort of the last person on the totem, and that's how I that seat was picked for me. It had nothing to do with the people who are filed in that seat. And as you mentioned before, it does not mean, even though it's a judge who is vacating that seat that does family law, it has nothing, that is not going to be an indication of what we're going to be doing.
And I appreciate your candor, your honesty. I would have presumed that you're both deputy DAs, that you know each other, but you have not known each other.
No, I mean, the district attorney's office is as big as the county. There's over 900 prosecutors, I believe, to date. And I actually did not have a chance to meet Mr. Perez until this election started.
I want to talk about running for office, and not for mayor or assembly, but for judge. It's a unique type of election. You're not allowed to talk about positions. I can't say to you, what's your position on X, Y, and Z? You can't reveal. So what becomes very important is one's ballot designation. The LA Times did a whole spread about ballot designation. Javier, you initially had a ballot designation of supervising gang prosecutor. Ultimately, the court had you change it to supervising criminal prosecutor. Without getting into the nitty-gritty of that, what is it about ballot designation that so much attention is paid to it?
Well, the voters don't have an opportunity, most voters don't have an opportunity to meet the judges, absent forums like these. And it's difficult to gauge what those qualifications are and what those candidates do. I happen to supervise many different types of cases. Among them are gang cases, sexual assault cases. In discussing my ballot designation with my former campaign consultant, the person who represents Ms. Townsend.
Oh, that's funny. That's another conversation.
That's a different conversation, and also in terms of choosing seat 84. We felt at the time that would be an accurate description of what I did, and not so that the voters were better informed as to what I did, and that's what I chose.
Why did you choose, Susan, criminal fraud prosecutor? You could have done something more broad, more specific. Earlier in your career, you were a generalist. Now you're focused on fraud.
Well, I think this goes back again to the importance of the ballot designation, because it really is practically sometimes the only thing your average voter is going to go by, simply because most lay citizens without a legal background, they don't know what the criteria is. I think that is the reason why it really is so incredibly important to be honest and, truthful about what it is you really do, because that's the only thing sometimes that they are going to go by. And so for me, yes, it's like I described earlier, they are fraud crimes that often deal with financial loss and some identity fraud. But at the end of the day, if someone were to ask me straight up, what do you do? I would have no problem, telling them and being honest. I'm a criminal fraud prosecutor, and I don't need somebody to tell me, well, this is kind of what it sounds. And I know what I do.
You're only allowed 3 words.
Yes.
Correct. So it's quick. Now, this is one race where it appears that your qualifications have not been put into doubt. In some of the other races, some of the candidates have not received stamps of approval from various, we'll call them rating agencies if I can. Both of you received a version of qualified rating from the Los Angeles County Bar Association. The Metropolitan News said no clearly superior candidate, wound up going with Ms. Townsend, but spoke very highly of you. That makes it hard for the voters.
It does.
How do you separate yourself out, Javier Starr? How do you separate yourself out?
Well, to the voters, if they get to know what my qualifications are, that I've been a deputy district attorney for 26 years, that I have handled all types of different types of cases, that as a supervisor in West Covina for the last 3.5 years, I've handled thousands of cases, supervised the prosecution of thousands of cases. Last year alone, West Covina filed over 10,000 cases.
Right.
I supervised those prosecutions.
Susan, how do you're both qualified, arguably.
Right.
How do you separate yourself?
And, I think in this particular seat, I think voters can be assured you're getting very two experienced attorneys, vying for the same position. But I think what does set us apart is our life experiences and what we've been doing in the office. Now, I've been in the office for over 18 years, and every single time when I'm asked for an assignment, I like being in the courtroom. I'm making appearances vertically prosecuting every single one in the last 8 years of my own cases, because quite frankly, I like the critical thinking, the quickness of being on your feet, and also the contact with the public. And I'm not making decisions behind a desk. I am in the trenches. I'm in a courtroom. And I think these are skills that are going to be very valuable for any judge starting his or her career.
I want to ask about judicial assignments. I know on day one, it is unlikely the supervising judge will say, Susan, Javier, what courtroom would you like to be in and what cases would you like to hear? But if at some point during your career on the bench, you are asked by the supervising judge, what type of cases would you like to hear? Would you like to be in a dependency court? Would you like to be in a civil court, a misdemeanor court? How would you respond to the supervising judge, Susan?
I would say to them, I will go wherever the need is. I would imagine that with my particular set of experiences and what I bring to the job, it would be in a trial courtroom setting. Typically, I think they do put new judges in a misdemeanor courtroom just so that they can get their feet wet. But quite frankly, I think that with the broad range of legal expertise I would bring to the position, which we kind of touched about on that with fraud and possibly going into civil, I would be open to wherever the need for.
Javier?
I would be in no position to ask where I'd be assigned. I'd be happy being elected and being assigned.
But what about, 10 years down the road? You got some tenure and maybe someone does ask you.
I think, given my expertise, I train UDAs on the penal code and rules of evidence, how to try a case. I would obviously love to go back to criminal court. I think we make a real impact as district attorneys in making sure that justice is done. And I believe it's my calling as a judge to make sure that justice is done in the courtroom and for the community. I
honor both of you for joining us, but more importantly, for putting yourselves out there and running for an office that will have tremendous impact on the daily lives of the residents of Los Angeles County. We wish you the best of luck. I want to thank Alan Friedenthal. He helped us set up these debates. He's a commissioner in the Los Angeles County Superior Court. The election, of course, is November 8th in Los Angeles County. The two candidates for office number 84, Javier Perez, Susan Jung Townsend. My name is Brad Pomerance. You've been watching Charter Local Edition.
The Latino vote matters more than you realize. Your vote can make a better future for your children, family, and friends. It's easy to register. It's easy to vote. Don't let others decide the future for you or your family. It's your right and it's your responsibility to vote. Latino Journal believes voting can lead to better jobs, better education, better safety, better health for you and your family. Vote on November 8th and be part of America's future.